Hi, I'm the faraway mythical plane of New York City, Kira.
Hi, I'm an 8-mana 1/4 with affinity for artifacts, Sam.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you so much for joining me. We have brought back the magnanimous Samuel Loy after his Pro Tour Lorwyn Eclipsed appearance.
Yes.
To talk about how competitive Magic has changed in the last decade or so.
Yeah, I can go longer than that if you'd like, but yeah, it's been a long time for me. So yes, thank you for calling me magnanimous. I think that is one of the words that was never around back in the day. Just to get started, yeah.
Well, because you're in your previous episode, we talked about you had this significant break between your second Pro Tour and Lorwyn Eclipse Pro Tour. Your second most recent was Fate Reforged Pro Tour, which is about 11 or so years ago.
I think, if I'm right, don't quote me on it. Google it if you want, but
we can fact check it later.
Yeah, I think it's about 11 years.
And I wanted to kind of get your ear on how the competitive landscape has changed in that period of time. We've obviously seen so many keyboard warriors and, even in the last 3 years, people decrying how much Standard has changed, whether it be card design, the shifted fire design, or pushed power. Everyone's talking about how much Standard has changed, but kind of increasing that lens to something a little bit more significant. How has Magic, competitive Magic, in your eyes, changed?
Yeah, so I think that the competitive Magic scene culturally has changed like a really large amount. So if we want to go back to the dark days of 2010 or so, it was very toxic gamery. So there was a lot of people just making fun of everyone without there being a real joke behind it. Just, mean things that people said to each other. Competition was at its highest. People were trying to shark each other quite a lot. Me amongst them, I'm not immune for that one. That's for sure. I'm sure people out there have a memory of that. I've had a lot of people come back and they're like, "Hey, do you remember that time you sharked me?" And I'm like, "No."
For our non-competitive players, what is sharking?
Oh, I'm sorry. So sharking is generally a way to trick someone into doing the wrong thing. So it could be using the rules to your advantage. It could be maybe using clever language to not misrepresent the board state or what a card does, but to maybe confuse your opponent or something like that. It's basically anything that is sort of outside what you would call the game of Magic to get yourself an advantage.
Like chalice checking people?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a bit of a dick move. Like, just generally speaking, people did it a lot back then. The way that the rules were adjudicated back then also encouraged it. And we've seen a big cultural change from that, not just from the player base, but also from the rules committees and the judges out there who just don't put up with that anymore, and it's great.
So kind of like the tolerance around just being a bit of a dick has really changed in terms of trying to eke out those percentage points in that way is really frowned upon in a way that it wasn't, say 10, 12 years ago.
Absolutely. So back then, it would be, if you were among the competitive set or the ultra competitive set, it would be seen as not only your right and what you should be doing to gain an advantage against someone who doesn't understand how the game works well enough. And I think that since then, people have sort of changed that mindset that, it's not really about making sure that the people who understand the rules the best win. It's about the people who make the best decisions. So let's get rid of that as much as we can. And it's been lovely to see all the, to me, new faces come through who haven't even seen what it was like back then at all. So they've not changed so much as they just never saw that in the first place, which is good.
And so that kind of like dovetails into this question about the kind of people that are playing competitive Magic then. The kind of people that you would have been sitting down at, a Fate Reforged tournament. Are those people still playing competitively, or is like the competitive landscape really shifted?
It has really shifted. So given that it's been 11 years, so I think that a lot of people have moved on in terms of where they are in life. So some people have moved on to maybe a different hobby, or maybe they've moved on to maybe playing a little bit more casually. A lot of people also have kids now who were playing competitively at that time. So that means that they can't dedicate the weekends to playing qualifiers and all these other things. And there's also less limited around as well in general, and a lot of those people are limited specialists who would only come out for the limited tournaments, and they're just not there anymore as much. So yeah, the cohort of players has certainly shifted quite a lot. I think that those who would have been playing in PDQs back in the day, or at least, in that time, you would see very few of them now.
And with that comes like a really big mentality shift as well, because those are the kind of people, those are your Sharky players. Those are your, do what it takes to win, no matter if it's kind of ethical or, not necessarily like, it's not mean, but it's not kind either.
Yeah. I think people considered the structure of the rules to be beyond ethics, and now they don't do that anymore. But yeah, I think most of those people hopefully grew up. I know I did, but I think that, most of those people who are still around since that time, whether that's an Isaac Lee or a Russell Cutting, I've had personal conversations with about like, how would we best represent the game now? What are the things that we, won't do again? Where are the new lines for us? And I think that most people have put the work in there, which is just really lovely, because you don't have to. But I think it makes it a better, more welcoming environment for newer players.
So how do you think you've changed as a competitive player in that time? We touched on it kind of briefly in the previous episode, where you talked about like you're a bit more chilled out. Yep. You're not as, tense.
Yeah.
But do you think you've changed as a competitive player in other ways?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, the internal stuff's very different for me. I don't care about the result quite as much, and I'm not ruining the game for myself, which is a selfish way to look at it. But hopefully I'm not ruining the game for anyone else as well. So I think in terms of how I see myself when I'm sitting across from an opponent who's maybe new to the standard or new to a competitive environment. So whether, sometimes that will be on coverage, for example, that they're feeling a lot of pressure in that spot. I feel it's incumbent on me to bridge that gap as much as I can, maybe take some pressure off, whether it's jokes or just assuring them that I'm not going to allow them to miss a trigger, that I'm not going to take that advantage here because I can see that you're flustered and it's just not the way to be anymore. Now, I don't think anyone should go that far, but I am a bit older and am a bit more used to some of those environments, so I will choose to do those things now. And back in the day, I would have been doing exactly the opposite. Like
letting people miss triggers. Just
encouraging the miss triggers. When they're thinking, ask them questions to interrupt what they're doing. Look, I was good to make you miss something 3 to 5 times in a match, even if you're a competitive player back then. I would say that I was quite good at it. And
playing mind games.
But you got to play the mind games. That was the thing, right? Like it was about the game beyond the game, and now it's really about the game. So I think that just making sure that that's a better environment for people to play in, and also that even if you beat me, it's cool. Like that, I don't care that much about the result, and if you care a lot about the result, okay, let's make sure this game proceeds in a way that it's well managed by both of us, and the rules are paid attention to in that way.
So focusing on the game, can you take me back?
Yeah.
What did Standard look like in 2010, 2011 back in Fate Reforged format?
If we're doing Fate Reforged, that would have been, like 2015, something like that.
Because this would have been like the Siege Rhino meta, was it?
It was the Siege Rhino. So it was that the Pro Tour I played was modern, but it was Siege Rhino. In addition to, in Standard, there was the combined mana bases of, I think it was Theros. Actually, no, I've got that wrong. So if it was Khans and Theros, then it would have been the mono black, mono blue.
Oh, the Devotion deck?
I'm trying to remember. This is like a long time ago. So it was really dependent on mana. I think that's the best way to say it, is that the mana wasn't always good at all. So things like Theros had really bad mana when Khans came out and introduced fetches, and then there were fetches as well as the shocks from Return to Ravnica, which happened as well. So that allowed a variation in mana that happened over every different Standard format, but often it was terrible mana, and the deck lists were awful. So if you look back at those deck lists now, and it's a fun thing to do, I'd recommend anyone goes and does that, looks up a Worlds from those years. The deck lists are trash. Like the advanced analytics version of Magic the Gathering that we have now, it's so much better. Like you'll see people being like, oh yeah, Lightning Bolt's legal, but I'll play 2. And it's like, no, play 4 Lightning Bolt, please. Please play 4 Lightning Bolt. And yeah, the general knowledge of the game is so much higher now. So the information is way more accessible. The average player who plays even a semi-competitive event is so much further ahead than the average player back then. It's kind of crazy. So I would just say that the skill level, the knowledge level has gone up all around, as well as the mana is just consistently better.
It's so funny that you say that because I feel like for the last 3 years, I've just been, up until we got shocks back in standard, there's been this kind of harm, rumble, rumble, rumble. I'm upset with our mana bases. We had slow lands, and then we had fast lands, and then we had surveils, and there's been this kind of standard mana bases suck, and I can't do anything that's not, 2 colors. Like, 3 color is difficult. And then we've kind of, peaked in this now renaissance again where we've got verges and shocks and surveils, and you can play 4 color control and you can play 5 color elementals. And so it's interesting hearing you say, like, oh, back then, mana was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think Standard's a lot bigger now. So, well, it definitely is.
Definitely is.
I don't just think that. It's bigger than Extended ever was. But the concept of being able to do exactly what you want with the mana base is sort of new. It used to be that Standard was a lot smaller, so there was less total lands anyway. But also the things that you could do within a Standard format was actually pretty limited. So you weren't going like, oh, man, but I really want to play my Ninjas deck while it's still legal before Kamigawa rotates. When Neo Dynasty rotated and there was a bunch of archetypes there that never really got constructed play. It's like, oh, that sucks. The mana. If the mana was there, I would have been able to do it. Yeah, that's true. But it's also true that you can do 10,000 things with the mana bases. And back in the day, like the mana base would decide what you played.
And so like the ability and kind of like the, in terms of the overall card selection, like the card pool is bigger than it's ever been for Standard, especially with now 3-year extended rotation. It's, and Foundations, which is a 5-year core.
With like 700 cards in it.
With even more cards in it. You've opened the floodgates, so to speak. So do you find that like the metagames are even like far more diverse? Like there's, leaving aside the season of Izzet that was 2025, do you find that the decks are more diverse, like the metagame, is expanded, there's more room for iteration?
It's interesting. So I think there is more space for it, right? So as I say, the comparison for Standard right now is more extended back then. Old Standard just isn't a format at the moment, which is fine by me, but some people miss it, I think. I think that metagames still emerge in a top-down sort of way. So you work out what the best thing is to do. And the information for that gets circulated really quickly. So it becomes about beating that and reacting to it, which is exactly how it worked back in the day, except the information wasn't quite as good. So let's say that you worked out what the best deck in the format was. Let's say you worked out Simic Badgermore. It would take people 3 months to realize that you were right about that. Whereas now it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And so whatever where we're starting the format, the most powerful thing you can do with Standard legal Magic cards, it gets solved very, very quickly. And that information gets proliferated really quickly as well. So while there is technically more combinations of things, with the power level of the cards at the moment, I would say that it is about the same level of diversity, which is interesting that it is actually quite similar in that way.
So would you kind of like, unequivocally say current Standard is the strongest it's ever been?
Yeah, I think the power level is about as strong as it. Yeah, I can't think of... I mean, like, we can go back and unban Vivi or something like that, or then we could introduce, like, Mice back into the format or something like that, then it would be even more powerful. I think it's not the fastest it's ever been, but yeah, it's about as powerful as it has ever been.
Well, because, the fastest felt like it was last year, the season of Izzet, where you were on a 3 turn clock, really.
Yeah, so I mean, like pre banning of Half-Eye Hero, Mice was a pretty consistent turn 3 deck, and everything was sort of warped around that. Whether it was the mono red decks, which was trying to do the same thing but also disrupt that, or it was other decks like Corey Steelcutter, which wanted to interact with it. That's about as fast and consistent as decks can be in Standard. And of course, they got banned because it is a little too fast. So I would say that current Standard, and we're talking Lore and Eclipse, just pre-TMNT or even just after, then I think in those formats, everything's about a turn or two slower at the moment. So we're not as fast as we've ever been, but the card quality is insane. Every card you play is a 2-for-1. It's got 20 lines of text. It's probably a mythic. And yeah, I mean, it's great. It's informationally dense and there's a lot of decisions to make. And I think it's in a really good spot for that. But yeah, the power level's crazy.
It definitely feels like the kinds of cards that we get in standard sets nowadays is, and there was a really great video that Ben shared with me about power creep in the format and how, it used to be that you would have a, 2-mana 2/3 with an ability, and that was like really overpowered.
Yeah.
And now you have evoke elementals that have 2 different spells stapled to them as well as other abilities. And you've got, enchantments that also are creatures or creatures that have enchantments on them or other, it feels as though we've really broadened the scope, which has increased power. Like the two things seem to go hand in hand. The more things your cards can do, the more powerful they are.
Yeah, they have both a lot of utility, as you're saying, like the modality of a bunch of these cards or what you can apply them to gives them modality as well. And they're applicable in many stages of the game. I think I think the print was maybe 4 years ago, but Blood Tithe Harvester as a card, a 2-mana 3/2 that made a blood token. That is a nuts card, right? I think it'd still be playable now, but it's kind of been power crept already. So when we're talking about a card that provides 2 pieces of cardboard effectively for 2 mana, Blood Tithe Harvester and Badgermaw Cub, we're talking different sorts of games. Badgermaw Cub is a lot more powerful than Blood Tithe Harvester, and that was already what we were calling a power creep when that got printed. So yeah, the power level is really high. I think that if it's done in the right way, and it's not always done in the right way, we have seen bans because of it, but when it is done in the right way, it actually provides a really complex game state. And if the game state is really complex, it can be a really rewarding way to play Magic. And I think that if we're introducing complexity for a reason, for like a benefit, something that like ends up rewarding the players for engaging with the game and getting familiar with all the cards and enjoying solving a complex scenario on the board, that's fantastic. But the other side is sometimes there's some needless complexity and that can feel bad.
Well, because sometimes watching, Pro Tour Lorwyn, getting to watch that was such a delight. It was so interesting to watch so many decks do their things. Some of like watching some decks less fun than others. Watching a Bant airbending deck is probably not my favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
But sometimes, getting to watch lessons like hand sculpting, discard, monument triggers, artist talent triggers on top of that, discounts from Grand and artist talent in the way that they're just churning through. Like even on Arena, I was sat down and I was playing blue-white control against an Is It Lessons deck, and I hovered over their deck at one point, and it was like 26 cards left in deck, 27 cards like in graveyard.
Yep.
And I like looked at my deck and it said like 40 cards in deck, and I was like, yeah, you're gonna scroll through that deck very efficiently.
Yeah, scrolling through is a good way of saying it, actually. That it is what it feels like. It's interesting. I think I like to call it the era of APM Magic, so actions per minute Magic. So it doesn't matter what you're playing at the moment, and this has been the case in some of the other formats, but like at the moment, like if you're playing elementals, you're evoking once on turn 2, once on turn 3, twice on turn 4 sometimes, and you're making heaps of micro decisions all the time like that. Lessons is a great example of it as well, where you just like, every card is a choice and you're just going through and through and through. I want to ask you a question about that. Does that feel overwhelming as someone who's newer to competitive Magic?
It can be. I think sometimes staring down the barrel of it doesn't surprise me that people are intimidated by competitive play. That if this is what, when you're playing best of threes and this is what you're up against, and you're up against someone who's going to literally see more than half of their deck in a given game and is going to be able to refine and pick out, it can be really intimidating to just sit there and be like, how do you plan against that? And then you sit down and you watch a Badgermaw Cub match, and they've got 12 mana on turn 3. They're casting, Nature's Rhythm for an Ouroboros, and then they're immediately harmonizing for another one.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and it's really powerful. And I find it, like, as someone who's interested in competitive Magic, I find it really fun. I'm like, this is crazy. You thought Commander was fun? You thought like Commander, like mono green landfall was cool? You can do it in standard now, and it's insane. You can recur Fabled Passage until the end of time in that deck.
Yeah. 23 4s in play.
Yeah.
And yeah, the other side, you like mono green, but that's not your vibe. I don't know, Badger Moles and Cradlehoof. There you go.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you like in a certain way. Like the archetypes are distinct, and I think it makes it really fun at the moment. One of the things that, just going back to like older Magic, that you would sometimes get in a competitive season, a standard card would be so powerful that it would warp the meta around it. Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, a card that is completely power crept out of the format. Like, you know, so it's a 4-mana Planeswalker that can turn stuff into a 5/5 and make 2/2 allies, right? That's what it does. It's, you know, right now you just couldn't play that card. But at that time, in some versions of its legality, every deck wanted to play white because just resolving one of those would just control the board and it would dominate exactly what was going on in that game of Magic. Right now, we do have a lot of cards on a much higher power level, but because we have them in such distinct designs, they all can exist simultaneously and all get play instead of, you know, one card defining a format, which I think is cool. I like that.
I mean, I think it's interesting that we're in an era of Standard where Omniscience, Crater of Behemoth, and like Deceit are like all incredibly playable, like, you know, Sapling Nursery, like these huge 6, 7, 8, 10 mana spells are playable. And even looking back 1 year to 2025, that would seem so impossible.
Oh, absolutely.
It felt like the era of big spells ended when Up the Beanstalk got banned, because like that Overlord's deck seemed like the peak of big spells.
Yes. So like impending as a discount and cheating on mana and getting these things into play cheaply is what it was about, and it still somewhat is, I guess. Like you're not getting any of those spells into play fairly unless you're playing a very long game. You're trying to get them, you know, Omniscience, I'm trying to get it into play for 4 mana, not for 10. But at the same time, it is interesting that like they're like kitchen table classics of cards, like Craterhoof and Omniscience particularly. They're absolute kitchen table classics, and you can play them in Standard, and that's kind of cool.
It's really, like, it's fun to see how things have changed. I'm excited that we're kind of in a more turns 4 to 6 era of Standard, because I think that's where I made this comment to Meia, and she disagreed with me a little bit, where I was like, this is what to me is like powerful Magic. Like this mid-rangey, you know, what you're doing is splashier. It's more impressive. You know, Corey Steel Cutter, like killing someone on turn 3, that's strong, but it's fast and doesn't feel as good as Roaming Throne, Evoke Deceit, Double Deceit you, Superior Spider-Man, get it back, do it again. You know, it feels like this to me feels strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolute haymakers that you can do at the moment. So whether that is something like you say, like the Roaming Through Elemental interaction and Bringer of the Last Gift coming back and reanimating your whole graveyard, Omniscience, all those sort of things. I think that Magic is at its best when people can do that if they want. I still want to play aggro. Don't get me wrong. I love me an aggro deck. But I think that having different styles of Standard come in and out depending on the season and the month, as you said, 2025 looks very different to 2026, and I think that's great. That is exactly when the format says it's healthiest, when things are rotating through, you get different looks at it. Maybe the cards that you know, maybe you bought a playset of something on release because you thought that card was sweet. You couldn't play it last year at all. But this year, hey, maybe doing that big over-the-top thing is really good now. So maybe your Roaming Thrones are now a great card. So I love that it is an evolving problem, Standard. And I mean, this is one of the reasons I love Standard, dislike Modern so much, is that in Modern I can just stay with the same deck forever. In Standard, I have to evolve every 3 months. I've got a new problem to solve. And I think it's really cool that, that's actually happening. There is nothing that has been so dominant after the Vivi ban. For so long that we're not getting that, which admittedly it wasn't that long ago, but the fact that we've gotten 2 sort of mini formats in so far after the ban is a really good sign that it's in a good place, despite, you know, people being a little nervous about this current design.
So then looking ahead, we've got a lot coming through the rest of the year. We've had Lorwyn, and that's all we've had so far this year.
Yeah.
We're about to head into TMNT, and then we've got Strixhaven, and then we've got Superheroes and The Hobbit, and that's a modern-only set, but then we've got Reality Fractures, Star Trek. What do you think then?
It's a long list.
It's a long list. But then kind of taking this pace that we're on, how are you feeling about Standard going forward? You know, we've had this look back and how things have changed.
Yeah.
We're in a strong era. What do you think the rest of the year is kind of looking like?
I have ADHD with this stuff. Well, I just have ADHD,
Yeah.
but like with these sort of things, I love new cards. I would just have new spoilers every day for the rest of my life very happily. So for me, it's great. It does look like it will be very expensive to play Standard, which is the risk here. I would like to say that it's not a problem, but it might be. So for me, it's going to be great. The thing that worries me about it is the fatigue amongst the player base. And if we are fatiguing out Standard players, then I will have fewer people to play with. And I wouldn't like that. I want to play, Standard with everyone. So hopefully we're getting enough cards as the core of decks that are going to stick around that people can go like, okay, look, I'm not going to chase the meta, but I can have a viable deck that stays through the year and we can invest in one deck a year and just stick with the deck for the year. Hopefully that is the case, as well as we're getting changes around the edges and the top of the meta and the bottom of the meta. But it's yet to be seen. So whether people like the IPs is going to result in a lot of these things as well. But it's an interesting time that we just haven't seen this from Magic before. So it'll be a big test case this whole year of Standard and the Magic product. And look, I'm excited for it, but there are some risks. So yeah, it's a hard one.
Of the spoilers, because this will be coming out just after TMNT releases.
Yeah.
Do you have any cards that you're most excited for? Anything that you think is going to make its way into Standard?
Like 20 things I love. Look, I'm a big TMNT fan, so there's some things I like, which are just theme and whatever, and I just love the vibe of it. I understand that's not going to be a common thing, but for me, this one really hits home. I'm really interested in playing Krang. I introduced myself as that card earlier, so it's a 8 mana, so 6 and blue for an affinity for artifacts, 1/4 artifact creature, and it gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. And when it enters, if you have fewer than 4 cards in hand, you draw up to the difference.
Oh.
So it's a card draw affinity reward. So we've already got a couple of affinity cards in Standard, and I'm just hoping that we get a really cool affinity deck into Standard, and that would very much help in that.
Ooh, I hope this makes Simulacrum Synthesizer good again.
Yeah, I mean, it could.
Simulacrum Synthesizer, Memory Guardian.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And it's fun to say the word Krang. I will just say that helps as well.
I was, as someone who's going to be doing commentary, Krang.
Krang off the top. Just like
Krang off the top.
Krang! Fantastic.
That's the sound it makes.
Yeah,
That's the sound it makes when it goes on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Krang.
Krang straight to the face.
Because there's a second Krang as well that's like the Blightsteel replation that people are saying.
It's like Ultram Overlord or something like that. It's look, I don't want to go into the theme here, but yeah, there's like a few of each character, which is what we're getting in these smaller properties.
Yeah.
And so sort of what we got out of Avatar and Spider-Man, and we're getting out of TMNT as well, which is it's interesting. I don't know how that's gonna feel to people in Limited particularly, but there's multiple of Leonardo. There's multiple of Michelangelo. All the turtles obviously, but there's multiple Shredders, there's multiple Splinters, there's multiple Krangs, and I think that having access to that sort of design space for them is actually, like, for the designers of these sets, allows them to actually push some cards in some really weird directions and have two looks at the same character. And we have seen, like in Avatar particularly, like two Angs get played in the same deck, but still, it still counts.
Hey, that's still two.
It's still two. So yeah, they can have like multiple views of the same character at the same time, because we're probably not going to come back to TMNT. I would think, but
to be fair, this is our second return to the plane of New York City.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I will say that at least in Spider-Man and in TMT, it is part of both of those laws that they actually do go to multiverses.
Yes,
which is interesting. But I don't think any of those multiverses are Magic the Gathering multiverses.
No, unfortunately not.
I would love to see an arc in either of them where they go visit Nicol Bolas or something. That would be cool.
That would be quite funny.
Yeah, I'd be into that. I don't think New York City is a real place, though. I know that you say that you went to university there, but I don't think it happened.
I went there in my mind. The mythical plane of New York City.
The mythical plane of New York City.
They have these things called subways.
Yeah, I don't believe in that. And I've never seen a pigeon in my life, so...
thank you so much for coming back for another wonderful episode.
Thanks for having me again.
And thank you so much to MTG Bazaar for sponsoring Raise the Standard. And we've got a exciting standard tournament coming up from MTG Bazaar. Sam, do you want to tell me about what's coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the 100K, as I'm calling it. I think it's called the Sydney Standard Showdown, according to Pat, but don't call it that. Call it the 100K. So it's in Sydney, and check out the details at mtgbazaarevents.com. $100,000 prize pool. It is the largest cash event in the world, announced at the time of recording. We can never promise that someone won't put more money on the line, but currently it's the largest. So, come to Sydney, book your flights, come see me there, and let's do some standard.
And with all that said, that's all we have for you today. New episodes release on Mondays at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can keep track of all of our releases at Raise MTG on both Instagram and Blue Sky. A huge thank you to the Hen House Recording Studio for the ongoing use of their space, and a huge thank you to MTG Bazaar for sponsoring the show. We'll see you next week.